Welcome to the Ashes We Keep. I'm Jen Allen, a mom, a wife, a nurse practitioner, and someone who knows what it's like to carry grief. I sit here with people who have lost people that they love very much. We talk about the pain, the healing, and the very messy middle. And we also talk about the love that never goes away. This space is real, raw, and unfiltered. I hope you find some comfort here today. Today I'm talking with Catherine Miles. Catherine is a retired respiratory therapist, and she enjoys yoga, the outdoors, traveling, and riding her horse. Catherine unfortunately lost her daughter, Tara, to suicide in February of 2021. Catherine is here with me today to share Tara's story as well as her own story of grief and her healing journey. Thank you so much, Catherine, for joining me today. I appreciate you and your time, and I'm honored that you would consider sharing yours and Tara's stories on this podcast.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a second just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story and how you got to where you're at today.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I mostly lived in the DC area until 2018, and now we're down in Florida. I have been married to my husband for 16 years. We blended our families in 2009. We had 2 daughters and 2 stepdaughters. Tara was the youngest, and then my oldest, Devin, and then we had the 2 in the middle, and they were all a year apart. And so Tara was always the life of the party. She was really fun, outgoing. She was the one that we always all looked at and made us laugh. She lived life on the edge. She didn't like rules, which is what we loved about her. She was really funny. And looking back now, there's probably some signs in high school of the depression, but at the time I chalked it up to regular teenage things like not sleeping well at night and just, experimenting with drinking and stuff but regular teenage things that later in hindsight, you look back and think, what did I miss? And nothing really stood out. She was always very unorganized, very unstructured, but that's just how she had always been her whole life. So nothing really came to our attention until she started college, and she went away to Michigan State, and we were living in Northern Virginia, and she started having struggles with her mental health and started seeing a therapist and started taking some meds. And then that led us down the road that she went down of different medications, different therapies. She tried a lot of different things, and nothing seemed to work. So she lost her battle with depression, anxiety on February 21st, 2021. We did a lot to help her. She did a lot. We all tried so hard. But, at the end of the day, nothing really worked. So since then, I've just tried to, get my life, keep going. It's been rough, but, finding support with other parents, support groups, reading, helping other people. That's just a few of the things that I've done to, just keep going on this journey.
Yeah. So you're a little bit further along your grief journey than I am. And probably a lot of people. So I like to ask this question a lot. How do you compare your grief today to the very early days after you lost Tara?
I think the beginning, it's a blur. You just, in the beginning, you're so lost and so just in a state of shock. I think your body just goes into shock. And there's this, for us anyways, there's this flurry of activity in the beginning. Like she left some journals behind. So we're like reading all the journals and we're frantic and we've got to get into the phone, and the police had the phone, and then we got the phone back, and then we got to get into the laptop. And, we're just searching for answers, searching to get inside her head. I'm reading the journals helped. But it was just this need to know, what happened, in such a state of shock. And then and I think disbelief for a while. And then, over the
Mhm.
first year, things, you go through all the first birthday, the first Christmas, the first everything, the first of everything. And then um, you get past that and it's like, okay, now what? Okay, now we're going in second year. And then I think just over the course of time, it starts to soften a little bit. I wouldn't say it goes away. Your grief never goes away. And I think as a mother, you're feel like you're missing a limb, really. Um,
Yeah.
and so I feel like now my grief is always still there. Obviously, it's softened. I don't know that the word would be less. It's just different. You know, you've I found out how to have joy and grief at the same time. I mean, still have my moments, that are really hard, but um, it just softened, just becomes a part of you, and you learn to live with it. Really,
Yeah. I love that you mentioned finding joy and having grief at the same time. I talk about that duality a lot. And I think one of the places people, especially parents, get stuck at is feeling or deciding that in the very beginning that they're never going to be happy again,
yeah.
or that it has to be one or the other. Um, at what point did you realize that you could have both, that you could have some joy
Um,
in your life, grief?
um. Well, I think I've always been a glass half full kind of person. So, when this happened, obviously I can't change. We can't go back in time. This terrible thing, the worst thing ever has happened. And so the way I work is the way, I've always operated is like, okay, what am I going to do now? What's plan B? Like, this is not what I planned, but I have to find a way to keep going. So I think that for me, it was like reading books, um, finding other people that have been through this. And I joined a group called Helping Parents Heal online. They had online Zoom meetings, and then we were in South Florida at the time, and one of the person that was leading it, Sandra, she had lost her son to fentanyl overdose, and we both had horses, and so we got together with horses and rode together. And she really helped me. She's probably 3 years ahead of me, and so we went out and rode our horses together. And I was like, well, I could still do this. And the horse that I have was Tara's horse. We used to ride
Mhm.
together, and so I think I was riding horse with her, and I think it was like we're two grieving moms and we're riding, but we're still living, we're still alive. We can still find joy, but it's hard, it's hard. But you think you just try to. I guess I try to like honor Tara with what I do and take her with me, and but I think I've met a lot of people on this journey, and some people do curl up into a ball, and they and just can't get out of bed for a while, and that's okay. You have to do what works for you. And some
Yeah.
people, but it maybe starts small. You go outside, go for a walk. Find something you like to do, or something that your child like to do that you can honor them while you're doing it.
Yeah. I love that. Um, One of the things that we like to do as a family is my son loved tie-dye. He always had like a tie-dye
Yeah,
t-shirt on or something. So we um always find like tie-dye, I don't know, stickers and
yeah,
socks or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I want to get my dog a new harness that is
Right.
tie-dye. So we do
It
that.
makes you think of him.
Um, yeah, yeah. It's a very cool way to keep him close.
Yeah. And I
Do
think
you
if you
guys
try to
have
think of, like happy times, you try to think of things that make you
Yeah,
smile, like, wow, he liked to do this, so we're gonna do tie dye, that kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, that's helpful. What kind of other things do you like to do to help keep Tara's memory alive in your life?
Um, I mean, the riding is a big thing. Um, Trying to think, like she likes sushi, so a lot of times, like on her birthday or on the angelversary or whatever where you want to call it, we'll go get sushi with her sister. Um, just tried, um, think of things that she liked to do or things she liked to eat maybe, or just expressions that she used and things like that. We've done some walks with American Foundation Suicide Prevention, which have been very healing, getting out there. Um, she also mentioned that when she was sick, that she wanted to help other people with mental illness. Well, my computer went dark for a second. I don't know why. Oh, there you go. And so she talked about wanting to go to law school and wanting to help other people with mental illness. And she wrote in her journal that she hoped her story could help other people. So I do try to share her story and do things like this and share her story and talk to people. And, I've had people reach out, friends who have a child that's struggling, and they're like, what do you think about this? Or, and just because they know all that we've been through. So I try to share her
Yeah.
story in her name because I think she would appreciate that, because that's what she wrote in her journals. Like, tell my story, hope it can help other people, because, so I feel like she gave us permission to do that, and that's what she would want.
Yeah. That's pretty beautiful.
So,
As a mom, how have you handled any type of guilt throughout your grief process, if any? And what I mean by that is, like, I see a lot of parents, especially moms, feel guilty about being happy or feel guilty about the healing process. Did you experience any of that? And if so,
yeah.
how did you handle it?
Yeah, I think in the beginning you do, because you're so sad for so long, and then the first time you smile or laugh, it's like, what am I doing? I lost my child. I can't be happy. And
Yeah.
I think you just get to a place where you just have to be kind to yourself. I definitely had guilt. We all do. I think any parent, that loses a child, I mean, we all, as a parent, I feel like it's our job to protect our children, but I read somewhere somebody wrote, we can protect them from all the things, especially when they're little, from hot water or falling in just you can control their behavior so much, but as they
Yeah.
grow older, you can't. And, you just have to learn that you can't control, they have, and most people that died, well, my case, my daughter died by suicide. So she had a disease in her mind, and I couldn't protect her from that. So I think you just have this feeling like, I got to protect my child, but you can't protect them from themselves or what's going on inside their body. And so I think it's hard in the beginning, and that's where a lot of the reading came into it, and online support groups, probably how I found you, like, you band together with other parents, and we all wonder could we have done differently. And in the beginning, there's just all these feelings. What did I miss? What didn't I see? And then you just at the end of the day, you just have to, it's not going to bring them back, and
Yeah.
there's none of us have the ability to save another person, whether it's an overdose or suicide or cancer, I mean, it's just out of our grip. So I think at some point, at the end of the day, you just have to be kind to yourself and let those feelings go. And because I don't think our kids would want us to go around miserable saying, what did I do? And Tara wrote in her journals, my mom was the best mom ever, she did everything. And I try to remember that, because I do go down the rabbit hole of like, what did I, well, when she was having trouble sleeping when she was 16, I should have taken her to the doctor. Maybe that was sign, but I didn't. I'm using the knowledge I have now about depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, and everything I've learned, and I'm trying to apply it to what happened 4.5 years ago, but that's not fair to myself, because I didn't have this knowledge. Now, obviously I would have done things differently. So that's why I try to take the knowledge that I've gained and share it with other parents. Like, one of the things I used to do with Tara when she was really depressed, so she would say, I feel like all the things that you hear about. I'm a burden, you know, sh- um, I feel like a shell of a person. I don't like this anymore. And I used to be her cheerleader. No, Tara, you're beautiful. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You're not a burden, you're family. And then now I've learned, the best thing you can do is to validate someone's feelings. And instead of being a
Yeah.
cheerleader, say, wow, that must be really hard. That must be really hard to have those feelings. And so validate her feelings and make her know that she's being heard. I didn't do that, but I can't beat myself up because I didn't know that at the time. all I want to do
Yeah.
is love her and hug her and just, so I can't, but what I can do is share it with other friends that reach out to me and say, my child's struggling. I could say, well, validate their feelings. Just sit with them. You don't have to say anything. Sometimes you can just sit with someone, and just when they're depressed, instead of trying to, we try to get out of the house, go for a walk, do something. But I think it's better just to sometimes just say, you don't have to say anything, just sit with someone. So I have learned that, ways that I can support other people in her honor.
Yeah. I think that applies to people in the grieving process too,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've had people reach out to me and say, my friend's son or somebody just died, by suicide, or they just lost their child, and they connect me with them. And I try to just think what helped me back then. And, initially it's just finding something, wow, this person lost a child the same way and they're still standing. And that helps a lot, just to know,
yeah,
because in the beginning you're like, I can't go on. What am I going to do? So I think finding out someone has survived this terrible thing is very helpful.
yeah. What other kind of things helped you, do you think, in those early days?
Um, my animals, we have dogs. Yoga is huge. I've done yoga for years, but yoga's been huge for me. The just the breathing, the the just the things they talk about, being present, being mindful, being, not worrying about tomorrow, not worrying about yesterday, things like that. And just the actual practice of the breathing and just being where you are and not letting your mind drift about what happened in the past or what's happening in the future. That's helped me a lot. Going outside, just going for a walk. Like I said, the support groups have been huge too.
Yeah. Um, One of the things that I've learned throughout this process is making sure I give my grief some time,
Hmm.
so that she doesn't, get pissed off and attack me
Right,
later or
right.
sneak up on make me
Yeah.
pay for it. um, are there ways that you allow yourself to do that? Do you just let it come when it comes, or do you set time aside for your
I
grief?
try to I've done a lot of like, I'm in David Kessler, yeah, he's a grief expert and he's got a group called Tender
Yeah,
Hearts. It's an online support group, and I've done a lot of reading it, and one of the things he says is you have to tend to your grief. Because I find that if I don't, like I think about Tara all the time, but if I don't, every now and then I just have to kind of just sit and be in my feelings and think about Tara. And because I find it, if I don't do that, it starts to build up. And then I
yeah,
find myself kind of overwhelmed. So it's almost like you have to set aside a time. And he says, like on a holiday, if you're stressed about going to a family function on a holiday and, how am I going to grieve my child? What am I going to do? Then set aside a time. And I try to do things like that sometimes, like just go sit in a quiet place and just think about terror, think about, or look at pictures or something like that, then just kind of tend to my grief and make time for it. And that's also kind of what I do in yoga. Towards the end of yoga, when we go in shavasana or resting, I try to just sit there and think about Tara. Because you just, you can't, you just have to make time for it in your day. And I do try to do that. If maybe not every day. I mean, she's always on my mind, obviously, but um, just not, I just find that if I stay too busy, because there's a temptation to just stay busy, be running
yeah,
around doing things. So sometimes you got to slow down and just be present with your grief and sit with it.
yeah. I've learned it's definitely something that if you try to run from or hide from, it'll
Yeah,
only
it'll come and get you.
gets worse. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Tell me, what's your favorite story that you love to tell about Tara? I want to know
um,
more about her.
there's so many. Uh,
That's sure.
so she just had a really goofy um person. I mean, she had a lot of like funny things that happened to when she was a child. Like she went to the dentist one time. She was like 3 or 4 years old, and the dentist comes out to the waiting room, and he said, "Did you know that your daughter has a dice up her nose?" And I was like, "A dice? What are you talking about?" He said, "She's got a dice up her nose," and I was like, "Well, just take it out." And he said, "I can't, I can't just pull it out because it might bleed." And so, I don't know why my computer keeps getting dark. He said, "I can't just take it out; it might bleed. So you have to take her to the doctor." So I took her to the pediatrician. I'm like, "Okay, my daughter's got a dice up her nose." So they went up, and they pulled this dice out, and it was like a full dice. And I said, "They're like, do you want it?" And I was like, "No, I don't want it." So I was like, "Tara, why did you put a dice up your nose?" And she's like, "Because her friend told her to." And then another time, we went to the playground with a friend, and my kids were in Catholic school, and she had like a little dress, little uniform on. And the kids were playing at the playground, and then the next day at school, I get this phone call, and they said, "You're going to have to come pick Tara up. She's itching her private parts or something." And I was like, "Oh no, she's hiking up her skirt and she's scratching." And so I came and I go and get her, and I take her to the doctor, the pediatrician. The pediatrician probably thought, "What kind of a parent are you? Your kid always gets these weird things." She had poison ivy up there. And I was like, because the day before the playground, when she was playing with her friends, she didn't want to miss anything. So she didn't tell me she had to pee. So her and her friend went behind like a piece of equipment and picked up the skirt and squatted in some poison ivy. So we just have a lot of stories like that, like just goofy
Yeah.
things. And another time her stepsister was visiting, and she had hurt her foot, so she had crutches. And her stepsister was upstairs in the bathroom and put the crutches out in the hallway. And my husband and I are downstairs, and we hear this like boom. And we both instantly just said Tara, because we know it's Tara, And there we go. And Tara's at the bottom of the stairs because she'd always wanted to use crutches. So she got the crutches, put them under her arms at the top of the stairs, and proceeded to head down the stairs on crutches. So she swung forward and landed on her head,
Oh.
So then we go to the ER, to get her head scanned. I was like, oh my God. So we just have so many like goofy things that she did. Because she just
Yeah.
always was very impulsive and just did things, But she always made us laugh.
She sounds like a character.
She was a character. She was. I mean, when I look at videos, it was the other 3 girls and us. So we're always like watching Tara. Like she was always on,
That's funny. I noticed that about like Daniel was that in our family
Yeah.
too. So he was definitely the goofball and the one that always wanted to have the attention on him and
It
just
seems to
being,
be the case with a lot of these kids, it's like their candle burned so brightly, and like they were just too much for this world. Like they were just so out there and energetic. And I've just found that with a lot of the other parents that I've met.
yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna take a different direction again, and I just want to ask you if there were experiences that you had, especially early on in your grief process, like maybe things that people thought were helpful, or they were trying to be helpful and said something that wasn't, or did something that wasn't helpful. Did you experience anything like that?
I didn't experience a huge amount of that. I did have like one person in particular who I was a friend, had been a friend in the past, but we kind of lost touch. And she kept sending me messages. What happened? What happened? What happened to our, darling girl and all this stuff. And this was like days after. And this is someone I hadn't talked to in a long time. And I just couldn't deal with it. And my daughter finally took my phone and just answered for me. And she just said, my mom's grieving, give her some space. And, that it was just like people wanting to know. And, I mean, I was in shock. So,
Yeah.
I didn't have a big experience of a lot of negative things. I did have another friend who was at the barn where we keep our horse. And, I went back there, to see my horse and everything. And everybody knew, and people would come up and give you a hug or whatever. And it's awkward, right? But you don't, I mean,
Yeah.
I think, now I have my ways dealing with, if I know someone had lost a child, I would know what I would want to say or just sit with them. But at the time, I can't say I wouldn't have acted inappropriately before losing my own. But I remember going back and, some people just come up, no words, just give me a hug. But this person didn't say anything. She didn't mention it. It was like, and it really bothered me because I'm like, she hasn't even
Yeah.
acknowledged, that I lost Tara, and she'd met Tara before, so it really upset me. And finally, somebody else at the barn kind of went and she apologized and she's like, I was a really bad friend. I think she just felt uncomfortable, so
Yeah.
I try not to judge people. I mean, at the time I was very hurt, but now looking back, I think, well, if I was around someone who lost their child 10 years ago, I probably would have been like, do I say anything? Because I think there's this thought that if they say their name, they're gonna remind us that they died. But we're very aware, we're very aware.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably the same. You want people to ask, and say, hey, tell me something funny about her. Tell me what he did. We want to talk about
Yeah.
our kids just because they're not here. That doesn't change. We still want to. So the best thing you can do for someone that lost a child, even if it's recent, is just say, tell me about your child, tell me a story. Tell me what he did. Tell me what he liked. I mean, I think that rather than just going all silent, because I think
Yeah.
that's much harder.
That is one of my favorite things. It's like an unexpected surprise usually for me when
Yeah.
somebody asks me,
Yeah.
one, how I'm doing with the loss of my son, because most people, unless they're really, really close, don't ask
Yeah.
that. Or, then when people want to talk about him,
Right.
I get really excited because
Yeah.
outside of my little circle, I don't get to talk about him,
No.
hardly
No.
ever. So,
Especially if it's people that didn't know him. It's like when you're around people that you can share stories or they tell you something or send you a picture that you've never seen, that's really nice. But when you're around new
yeah,
people, they don't know them. But I mean, most people say, tell me about your children or how many children do you have? So,
yeah. How do you I get asked that a lot, especially meeting people, and, um, there's always that awkward part, right, where
yeah,
I have 2 kids, and
right.
then we have an adopted daughter also, and then they ask more
Yeah,
questions, um, and then I, have to get into a little bit of our story,
right.
and there's always awkwardness. How do
Yeah.
you handle that when people ask you?
Yeah. I mean, because we moved into a new neighborhood here 2 years ago. So nobody knew. Like where we lived when Tara died was not where she grew up. We moved after she'd been in college for a year. We moved because we thought all the kids were, kind of out of the nest. And so we moved to South Florida, my husband's job, because we wanted to get, down to he was going to retire soon. So he got transferred. And so that neighborhood, everybody knew when she died because that's where we lived. But then we moved here 2 years ago and it's like starting over because you don't realize how many times people ask you, how many children do you have? And the very first time somebody asked me, it was right after she died, like that year, we were at some sort of party and someone said, how many children do you have? And I'd always just automatically said, 2 daughters, 2 stepdaughters. And I think it was the first time this had come up. And I said, 1 daughter and 2 stepdaughters. And these are people I was never going to see again. They were just casual person at a Christmas party or something. And as soon as I said that, I felt almost sick. Like I felt
Yeah,
so disloyal, like, oh my God, and I thought it just felt so wrong because I wasn't prepared for that question. And so after that, now when we moved to this neighborhood, it's like starting over because, it's a lot of new people. We all moved the house we built, everyone around us built. So we all moved in together. So nobody knew anything about anybody. So, that's what you do when you meet people. How many children do you have? So ever since that first time, I always just say 2 daughters, 2 stepdaughters. And then they say, oh, where are they? Oh, well, my 1 daughter's in Melbourne, Florida, 2 stepdaughters in Phoenix. And then And then my youngest daughter passed away. And then, there's the awkward silence. You know? Like my therapist said her and her husband can clear a room, because but she's like, but I just say I'm like 2 daughters, my youngest daughter passed away. And then sometimes people just, but I'm like, but that's my life, that's my reality, and I'm proud of my daughter, and so then if they say what happened, which they don't usually, but if somebody does, I just say she lost her battle with depression, anxiety, or she died by suicide. I usually say, just lost her battle with depression, anxiety, and she struggled and she tried really hard. Like, we've always been very, very open that Tara died by
Yeah.
suicide. We've been very open that she struggled with depression, anxiety, and so I don't have anything to hide, so I just tell people like it is, and it just so happened that our neighbor 3 houses over, who is just turned 80, but acts like she's half her age, but she lost her son when he was 21 years old, and,
Mhm.
he was in the, Air Force Academy, and he died in a plane crash, and that was, a long time ago, but she still and so she told me that we had this instant bond, instantly, even though our losses were much different, and we just instantly bonded. And, when she sees when we were at a New Year's party last year, and, New Year's always makes me a little sad because it's like we're starting another year without Tara.
Yeah.
And I got a little teary at midnight, and she looked over at me, and she just came right over and just started hugging me. And, like we had this instant connection. So you just
Yeah.
so it's also when you do tell someone new that you've lost a child, it's surprising how many people have also lost a child or know someone that's lost a child, so I
Yeah.
just put it out there because I'm like, this is my life, this is my reality, and, I've lost a child, so I don't ever hide it, and I'm always happy to talk about Tara.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. I also didn't really realize how common child loss is until
Yeah,
I lost my son.
yeah,
And I find a lot of comfort in being with what I call my people who
yes.
are grieving
Your
people.
tribe, your tribe. As
Yes.
I always say, my regular friends don't understand, because they don't know what to say, and they're just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine." And I'm like, "Oh, you can imagine." You just like but
Yeah.
you just have this connection with other parents, That's why the support groups are so helpful because, you just see other people that just get it, I mean, it's just hard
Yeah.
to explain. It's a club that nobody wants to join and none of us want to be here, but I'm grateful for the people that I've met and that have supported me and that I have supported. We lean on each other and on the hard days and the holidays and, just because other people just don't, as much as they care and they want to help, they just don't get it. And I'm glad they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of my goals with this podcast is, well, obviously to help people who are grieving,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
parents, because I just feel like they're my people.
yeah,
But also to teach people who have not experienced a profound loss like this how to sit with someone who has.
yeah,
And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. One, we don't really have a grief culture in the US. We avoid it at all costs.
right, right,
Um, and community is important, like to be
yeah,
surrounded when you feel like everyone has forgotten about you.
right,
Um, but also, none of us are going to get through this life without experiencing some sort of profound loss because we're all going to die.
right,
And we need to learn
yeah.
how to take care of each other.
Yeah, I know, because people are scared of it, I think, and I probably was before too. Because before Tara, I probably had only, lost a grandparent, which is expected, it's
Yeah.
the natural order of things, so but I do think, putting it out there, I mean, one of my closest friends, the day when the first day when I'm making phone calls, I called this one friend back in Virginia, and I just said what had happened because she kinda knew about Tara's struggles, and the best thing she did for me was, like, I'm gonna call everyone and let them know. I'm gonna take care I'm just gonna make the phone call." And she called, like, our close-knit group of friends. She called all these people for me and just told them, but so that I didn't have to call person after person after person. She just sat down and made all these phone calls, and that was huge for me because I couldn't even think, so that was really helpful, just everybody wants to send flowers and everything, and, flowers die, so it's kind of weird. We send people something that's gonna die, but people send plants. I appreciate the plants more because the plants kind of I don't know, it just I was never a plant person, and now I have all these plants that I kept alive that people sent.
Yeah,
But, I mean, I think people just wanna do something, they don't know what to do, so they just send stuff, which is nice. I mean,
yeah,
it shows that they care.
yeah, absolutely. I also really appreciate the fact that you were very open about Tara's death.
Yeah,
As a mother who lost her son to suicide, I can appreciate that, and,
yeah,
um, I I think it's important for people like you and I to sit down with each other too, because even though our stories are similar, they're also wildly different.
yeah,
Like, Daniel didn't suffer from any type of depression that anybody knew about, but, um but like you said earlier, looking back afterwards, there's, like, all kinds of things that, clicked for us that we were like,
yeah,
"God, I
yeah,
wish
hindsight's
I would've."
20/20. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
like,
I
we
think
actually. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say I've met quite a few friends, they're now friends who've lost sons to suicide, and the majority, a lot of the guys, they didn't know, because guys tend to hide it, they keep it under
Yeah,
wraps. They don't want to admit it because they're a guy, so where girls are more like, "Oh my God, I'm so anxious," so I think it's very common with the boys, and so I think maybe harder, for moms to get your head around when it's your son and you had no but what I always tell people, a lot of us, some people knew, some people didn't know. We knew about Tara's struggles, but I've probably met more people that didn't know. And
yeah,
we did everything we could. And then obviously people that didn't know are thinking, well, maybe if I'd taken him to therapy, maybe if I'd gotten him on meds, maybe if I'd done this, he'd still be here. But at the end of the day, we all ended up in the same place. So we did all these things. Someone else didn't know and didn't do anything, but we had the same result. So I always tell people, don't beat yourself up over that, what you didn't know, because you didn't know what you didn't know, and we all go
yeah,
back with the knowledge we have now and look at all these signs, but it doesn't change the end result.
yeah.
And
One of
I
the,
think
I think, most important lessons I learned was that at the end of the day, you can't control what somebody else does or doesn't do
no,
with their
yeah, you
life.
can't. Yeah, you can't. And some people will say, with the suicide, like, well, I had an argument with him or the girlfriend broke up with him. It's the girlfriend's fault. But people break up with people all the time, or people have arguments all
Yeah,
the time. And people with a healthy mind just deal with that argument or deal with that bad moment, but they don't take their own life. So
yeah,
we just have to be kind to ourselves and go, we did what we could at the time, but you don't know what someone's dealing with. And none of us have that power. And someone says, well, if I had made that phone call, well, you might have stopped him that day, but it might have happened then the next day. So you can't,
yeah,
we just have to know we're not superhuman and we can't change, what someone's going to do. And it's an illness in their mind. It's not, it's like the end stage of a, disease in the brain. It's not something, that, it's like because like David Kessler says, if a child dies by cancer, people don't usually say, well, if I'd done this well, maybe they do talk about some treatments, but I mean, that you don't have the control over, because it's physical, I think, with cancer or a
yeah,
physical illness, where I think because of mental illness, we can't see it. You can't see a scan and say, well, it's stage 3 or stage 4. So it's a little
yeah,
more a little bit more, it's harder to comprehend. Whereas a physical illness, a doctor can tell you the progression, and, you know,
Yeah.
suicide and mental illness is a little bit more complicated and unexpected.
Right. It definitely is. I know after we lost Daniel, like you said before too, like racking our brains trying to figure out any information that we could
Yeah.
gather, friends or his phone or
Right. The
whatever.
phone is huge.
Yeah. And we sat down and kind of thought about like the progression of his life and how many head injuries he
Yeah.
sustained as a kid. Um, and we kind of came to the conclusion that he probably had CTE. And so, of course, we both were beating ourselves up, thinking, well, if we could have gotten him treatment or we could have helped him or if we would have thought about
Yeah.
this sooner. But there's no help for that.
Yeah.
And so we probably would have ended up here
Yeah.
anyway. And
Yeah.
so I love that you talk about that,
Yeah, I think you just,
being kind to
I mean, I
yourself.
think that's just common as a parent, because we're thinking, well, what did we do wrong? It's obviously something I did, I should have done this, or I shouldn't have let him play sports, or I shouldn't, but we just did what felt right at the time, and they,
Yeah.
and he probably enjoyed the sports or whatever it was that that caused him to get the concussion. I mean, he probably enjoyed it, so that was part of his
Mhm.
life, and you can't undo that, and
No.
he probably had fun, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We just all do the what ifs, and but I try to, when I find myself going down that, because I did it more before, but I still do it now sometimes too. Like, what if I'd done that? And then I said, and then it's almost like I just have to go stop. We're not going to go there, and then just start trying to think of the happy times and focus on the happy times. And I try to, remember that the majority of Tara's life was happy times, and not
Yeah.
think about the what I could have done or I shouldn't have let her go to college so far away, or but at the end of the day, we're here where we are, and I can't undo the past. I just have to appreciate the
Yeah.
22 years we have, even though it wasn't enough, the 22 years we had with her, and be grateful for those days and those memories.
Yeah. Yeah. I find myself there a lot too. And like you
Yeah.
said, I'm coming to the realization that there's absolutely nothing I can do to change the past
No.
and understanding that I can only control how I move forward
Right.
through this process.
Right.
And that's the only control I have is
Yeah.
is me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And
that's it. I mean, all we
it
can do
helps.
is go forward and do like what you're doing and try to share his story, and have, put things like this out there, and just try to help other people. And, because sadly, there's more and more of us in this club, every day. And so we just have
Yeah.
to lean on each other. I mean, when I hear of someone, any sort of, friend of a friend or whatever, soon I'm always like, give them my information, because I mean, I think that's so helpful, especially in the beginning, to
Yeah.
find your people, you know?
Yeah. I agree. It was definitely helpful for me. Like,
Yeah.
I joined even Facebook groups right away. I was like, "I need to be
Yeah,
around
that's what I
people
did.
that know what I'm talking that know what I'm going through," and,
Yeah,
um,
that's what I did.
it
I got
was
really got all the suicide support groups and
yeah.
parent groups, because I just had this, like, frenzy of, I gotta find I don't know what I'm doing, but I've gotta find people, I've gotta find an answer, I've gotta find a solution, I've gotta find a way forward. You don't move on, you move forward, but not on, I think is what the saying
Yeah,
is, We don't move on from our loss, we move forward with our loss.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I wanna ask you one final question that
Uh-huh.
I ask everyone.
Okay.
Again, this is for the people who have not experienced a profound loss. Knowing what you know about grief now, what is something that you wish people knew? about grief that have not experienced it on this level?
Um, I think really, that it doesn't go away. I think that before I probably thought it was like those stages of grief, like, acceptance, denial, whatever. I don't even know the order, but I think I thought it was something that just happened. Okay, this person's in grief, from here to here, you're in grief, and then you're good. You move on. Um, but now I know that it's not something that you just, start here and there's an end date. There is no end date. And that's what I think I've learned is there's no end date. I think I said before, we just learn how to live with it. We learn how to carry it. We learn how to, find joy in grief. But I didn't, I had no idea before. I just thought people were in grief and it was like they were sequestered and just sad and crying. And then you just wake up one day and your life goes back to normal, but it's not like that, and in the
Yeah,
beginning, when it first happens, it's like you look around you and people are going to work and getting on the, going about their lives. And it's like, I just lost my child. How are these people like
yeah,
going about their lives? Like, don't they know that my world was rocked? But I think I
absolutely.
really thought a period of grief and then boom, you're back to normal. And it's not like that at all. Like, and I never realized, and maybe it's stronger to losing a child, but it affects every moment of every day of the rest of your life. And it just becomes a new you. I mean, there's no going back to the old me, there's a new me. And I think that what I learned is this just grief is just something that you incorporate into your daily life and it changes you. And I don't, and there's some good that comes out of grief, which I wouldn't have thought. Like I think we all learn to be more appreciative for what we have and for this
Yeah,
moment, for today, and we learn to be more considerate about what other people are going through. If somebody's kind of rude or something, you think, well, I don't know what's going on in their personal life. Maybe they just got some bad news or something. So I try to be more empathetic, and I think it's made me more. I mean, I'd like to think I was always caring and compassionate, but more considerate, I think, towards other people. I just
yeah,
probably never realized how much grief changes your outlook on life.
yeah. I know for myself, I'm definitely guilty of having thoughts like, seeing an acquaintance make a post on Facebook about the loss of their child and them being, super sad about it 6 years later, and thinking to myself, like, geez, get over it. Like it's
Right, right.
been years.
Yeah,
And it's unfortunately one of those things that you just don't know until you know. And I think largely in part because we just don't talk about it. Like
right,
it's
right.
just not okay to share.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's true. I mean, because you just look at things differently now, because it's such a big change in your life. And
Yeah.
I think it does make you look differently, and when I look back at, same thing, you look at people before and be like, "Well, yeah, it's been this long, that long, and now I totally understand it," it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so
There is no getting over it.
no, no, you just learn to learn to live with it and how to carry it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I really, really appreciate your time today. And I just want to give you one last chance to share any piece of advice or anything that you really would like other grieving folks to know.
Um, I think really just, being kind to yourself and not beating yourself up over something you did or didn't do or something you didn't know, and just knowing that we all did the best we could with what we knew at the time. And, they have that saying, if love could have saved them, our kids would still be here, and I think that's true. I
Yeah.
think we all, you know, have these kids and we loved them so much and we did everything we could to keep them here and to give them a happy life. And I think you just, at the end of the day, have to be easy on yourself and just, try to find some joy in whatever way you can, and surround yourself with other parents and people who get it. Cause I think that is a really huge in the healing process is just being with others who understand it. And also, especially in the early days, not being afraid to say no. You know, if somebody invites you to a Christmas party or birthday party or something, and it's just too much, then, people have this obligation. Well, I got to go. My friends are pressuring me. They say it'd be good for me. You have to go with your gut and you have to do what's
Yeah.
right for you. And if some days you just want to lay in bed, then you just lay in bed. But I think one thing that's important for people to know is that you don't owe anyone anything. So don't be pressured into moving forward with things if it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
very good advice.
I think that you just have to do what feels right at the time and what feels good for you and not cave into, doing things just because it's expected because, it's a huge thing to lose a child and we have to be good to ourselves.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for watching today. As always, please like, subscribe, and share our channel with folks that you think might benefit. And I hope that you have found some sort of peace and comfort in our conversation today. Thanks so much.